All right, howdy. Welcome. Today, what I want to do is I just want to go over a couple different weapons here that we practice in the Maijiang Longhorn and that are kind of staples in Kung Fu. And so these are the four core weapons for Chinese martial arts. Now, in the four core weapons, we have the saber, then we go to our staff, then we have the spear, and then the straight sword. Now, I list them in that order as in my Zhang Longhorn Kung Fu, that is the order that we learn them. We first learn our saber, then we learn our staff, spear, then lastly, straight sword. And that is kind of a good progression to learn the weapons, as saber is very easy to really kind of get the practice in and to get the basics in. So we teach saber first, that way you can get a little bit more mindful of having a weapon in your hand. So let's first dive into the saber and we can go through a couple different things about the saber and what makes it unique. All right, so let's use this one. So this is my wushu broadsword. Now, the saber or the broadsword, or the wushu broadsword, this one is made of I think this one's aluminum, but you'll see spring steel and stuff like that. And if you notice with this one, I can make a snap like that really easily. Now, this is for competition. These are what you'll see in more of the sport scenario. As they're lightweight, you can spin them really quickly and get a good movement with them. So you can move and cut really quickly. Now for traditional, we usually use a little bit of a thicker broadsword instead of a thin broadsword like this that makes the pop and wiggles, which is perfectly fine, especially if you're first starting out and you want to use a lighter broadsword. Using the wushu broadsword can be beneficial to learning how, distance and control first. But I really suggest moving on to a traditional broadsword when you're doing traditional movements. Now, not secrets, but some of the core techniques of the broadsword, you'll see in our ready position, a cat stance here. Or you'll even see it all the way back here to where the cat stance, pull back, and you're back here, or here. Now the angle of the blade, there's a couple different camps. You can be straight, pointing up, pulled back. Depends on your style, which is really cool, so you can add your own flavor in it. Some styles will even have one here or later on in their forms here. Now, the saber, since it is a single-edged blade with just the one edge here, it is going to be sharp on the top from here for lunges, but the back of the blade is not sharp. So you can do a lot of pressing and pushes down and wrapping here. So that way you don't actually hurt yourself when you turn and rest it on your body. So when you wrap, one thing we do when we wrap is I touch here. It touches the shoulder. That way when I cut, it stays close here. And so when you wrap, cut, cut. So since it has a single blade, right, it's much easier to teach than having a dual blade with another blade on this side. Especially if you're doing any presses or stuff, you'll end up cutting yourself if you have too many blades. So what happened was, originally they were using the jin. Then the jin got, because it was much thicker, then the jin got smaller as they switched over to the broadsword because it was easier to teach with the single blade. So that's the broadsword. This is one of the four core weapons. This is the first one, and we have a lot of techniques with it. You can lunge, pull back and cut. You can lunge and spin. All of that good motion there. On fighting, for more applicable motions, when you're fighting, you can block here. Everything's off the line in chopping whenever you're doing the fight, but you can still use your normal blocks and cuts. The big core difference between the Kung Fu broadsword and you'll see other styles is we really do touch all the way here. We touch and cut. You'll see other styles come up and flick. Be more here, here, which is the same thing. We're blocking here. Block and cut, right? Block and cut. All right, that's the broadsword. Let's move on. I'm going to grab a staff. Okay, so I am in my home studio, which I did build my living room into a spot that I can practice in. But with a staff, it is much harder due to the ceiling. But you can still fight with a staff in slower, or not slower, but in a smaller room. So when I'm here, I would be using more staff techniques here. So the second form that we teach is the staff, or the second weapon. Now the staff is the most popular weapon made by the monks of Shaolin Temple. You'll see in here renowned skills of the Shaolin Temple monks, which is amazing because they are really, really skilled. But there's so much more out there than just the Shaolin Temple. And there's so many different styles of the staff. You'll see it in karate, kung fu. I'm not sure about taekwondo because I don't know if they do weapons, but you get the point because it's a big stick. Even HEMA and the European style, they have their own staff forms. So it's a weapon that, you know, it's a big stick. So if you find a big stick or a medium stick, you can use it to hit people and keep them at bay. Now for the staff, we have a lot of sideways strikes where we shoot out and strike to the leg. And then you can block up and you can strike back down. You can hit with the other side doing spins. You can turn around, strike, push down. There's so much to do. One of the things that they say also is the secret to Tai Chi internal power is getting one of the big dragon pole staffs, which is a long, big, thick staff, and you sit there and you shake it. You do strikes, and you try and get the staff to wiggle all the way down. And it all becomes more internal. But the staff is one of the coolest weapons because you can do so much even from here. Boom, boom, attack. So it's a really, really cool weapon. I was never the best at it, but you know, it's fun. Now let's move on to the spear, which is great because I'm just going to be using my staff. Now the spear is a staff that has a knife on the end, or a spear tip on the end. Now the spear, I can easily do any blocking here, and then lunging out, all the way out, keeping enemies at a distance. You can push down, lock their weapon, and lunge. You can parry and pull back, push. The spear is one of the most deadly weapons on the battlefield when it was up against cavalry, of course, because, you know, cavalry, you can easily plant and stop the cavalry. Now, we don't live in those times, right? So what is the point of us learning spear and all these cool weapons? The point is, it teaches us body control, and I have a ton of fun. It also, like I said, teaches you that internal power. So the most important technique for learning the spear is called lan na za. And it is a block, parry, and a lunge. So if I start up here, I block down one. Now I can push into a bow stance, lunging out. When I pull back up into the block position. What that does is if they attack low, I can block low. Then I can trap their weapon down. Then I can stab forward here. And you'll see different variations of this in different heights depending on what style also. So you could see the way that I do it is 1, 2, 3. You can see more of a Tai Chi. 1, 2, 3. You'll see Southern. I don't want to say Southern because I don't know Southern spear, but I've seen them push more flat and then more of a double-handed lunge is what I have seen in tournaments before. And then you also see more of a bigger pullback when they pull back up. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Depending on different styles. Also, one of my favorite moves is that you can turn and you drop down, hit the horse. All right, so that is the spear. Now let's get to my favorite of the 4 core weapons. This is the Jin, otherwise known as the straight sword. Now, if you notice, I have one up there behind the bag too. I'm not gonna bust it down, but here's my wooden one. Now, the Jin is different from the Saber as it's a single straight blade with double-edged, comes to a point. Now, this one is a lot harder to learn as we do have the double edge, so you have more opportunities to cut yourself. With that said, it is one of the favorites of mine, and I wish I would have started it sooner. So, in my theory is, sooner you start, sooner you get better. So I'm gonna give you a couple drills now to go ahead and start working on it, even if you don't have a Jin. So what you do is you take your hand, you do this. No joke. Just shake your wrist. What we are looking for is a loose wrist, and then you shake up and down. And then you do circles. And the other way. Good. So what they say is that the Jin is the brush. And what do they mean by this is a brush, like a calligraphy brush? It means that my arm is the wood, the sword is the bristles. So when I do my movements, there's a little delay with the sword. If you notice, it's nice and soft. I can dip the pen in the ink, and then I can move and cut. There's always a small delay on your movements. So one of my favorite techniques to teach is dipping the pen in the ink. So I'm gonna dip at different levels. I'm gonna dip one low, a little higher, up, 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 all the way up. And as we do this, we wanna bend the wrist. You can do this with a stick or even with your saber to start working on the wrist here. But you go one, you wanna bend, 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 bend. That's one technique. The second one is stirring the pot. So from here, I do a circle. Now this circle, we're gonna do a big one by leading with our wrist. I lead with my wrist, making a big circle, letting the tip drop. This is if someone attacks our wrist, we get our wrist out of the way, and then we can cut them. Move, move. From the side here. Good. And then of course, with the straight sword, since it is a double-edged blade, of course you can slash, you can do your normal cuts, you can do your lunges, where you lunge, pull back, cut, cut. You can do your spins. I don't want to hit the roof. Right? It's still a sword. You can do all of your cool sword stuff, but just be careful because it's supposed to be double-edged. Now those were the 4 core weapons of the Chinese Kung Fu systems. I'm going to show you just a couple more because there's a couple here that I find really fascinating. Now this one is one of my favorites. I call this the half moon spear. If you notice, it has a half moon axe edge at the tip. Include it with the spear tip. And then on the back, we have a big old spear tip. Now you'll see this being done as a spear tip, a circular tip, a big ball, whatever that is. But I like the big spear tip with the half moon spear tip on the other side. Now this incorporates a lot of the same techniques as our spear with the lan na za. One thing that I do like about this is that it has a double block. So when I block here, I don't just block one. I can block 1, 2, twisting their weapon away. Then I can chop back down, taking either their arm or their head. So I can block, chop. Then I can lunge forward just like lan na za. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 2, 3. Boom. Then if there's someone coming this way, I can use the back spear tip. Boom. This way here. Switch the hand. And then of course you have the axe part of it here, the crescent moon. That way you can do your chops to your spins, which I don't have the room here for it, but you can do your spins into your chops, taking their heads off. One of the cool things is the hook here. Is if I miss, I stab and miss, I can pull back, hooking their weapon or hooking them off this horse, whatever you need to do to dislodge the weapon or dislodge them off their horse. Awesome. So this is the half moon spear. Let me show you one more. Eek, it's buried. All right. Now these are some of the Maijin Lawhorn prized possession forms. This right here is the hook swords, the tiger-headed hook swords. Now in our form we use 2 of them. So we have the double tiger head hook swords. If you notice, it still has that half moon crescent that I really like, and a dagger tip on the back here. Then it's got the handle. Ignore that I just hit myself in the head there. And then it's got a full sharp blade here, all the way down, all the way around. Then of course this is sharp and the back is sharp. So these are really great because you have 2 weapons and you can hook and attack while doing different techniques. Moving forward. They're really awesome. Some of our favorites. You can really get really skillful and really blow people away when you learn these. Also very exotic. Not many people will learn this type of a weapon. And so it has big movements. You can jump. Boom. Move forward. Hooking and moving. Hooking and moving. It's a really cool weapon. You can use the back end, block, launch, chop, chop, pop, pop, and move forward. So those are the tiger-headed double hook swords. I'll do a whole video of techniques and stuff like that for these. That way there's a whole rundown. Not nearly enough room in my home studio to do this weapon here. But just wanted to show y'all because they're awesome. And then we have, I don't know if it's ready. Power on. Then of course the lightsaber. Now this isn't one of the core weapons. Now this isn't one of the core weapons, but it's fun. And part of doing martial arts is having fun. So one thing I do is I translate my Kung Fu sword skills over to my lightsaber for fun. So I can do my spins. All of that. You can do all of your flow arts, all of your Kung Fu with a lightsaber, which makes it so much fun. So those were the 4 core weapons and some bonuses that you can do with Kung Fu. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Take care. I'll see y'all sometime in the next video.